What is up, YouTube family? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then it's just welcome to my channel, girl. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button because you will not be disappointed unless you're a hater and you got bad taste. Period. Y'all gave me the warmest welcome back to these YouTube streets. I was so happy. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm happy to be back. Let me just give y'all some closure and close out the story of the luggage saga. If you follow me on Instagram, you already know the tea. We talked about it on live already. I did receive the package. Long, stressful story short, Washington Reagan's lost and found. First of all, let me say this. If you ever have a piece of luggage lost at the airport and it is found by the airport's lost and found, have them transfer it to your airline's lost and found, because apparently those are two separate entities, okay? What I did not know beforehand is that the airline, which I'm not going to guarantee all of them do, but this particular one, American Airlines at this particular airport, would have gladly just put that girl on the next flight. The airport itself, their lost and found, will not do that. They will ship you your luggage and you have to pay for the shipping. I learned that lesson the hard way, so you don't have to. It goes from out for delivery to lost and damaged. Lost and or damaged. I called them. They gave me the complete runaround. They were like, well, either we have a box that's empty and just the shipping label. Somehow they've got separated. We don't know which one we have. We don't know if we have the luggage without the label. We don't know if we got the package without the luggage, girl, but we'll try to find out. And we got 5 days. They tell me, meanwhile, I need to find out how it was packaged and whether or not the airline put it inside of a box. And I'm like, duh, they put it in a box. Like, surely they would, because only an idiot would attach a label directly to a product and not put it in a box. And then I'm thinking that if that were the case, UPS definitely wouldn't move it through the system like that. They would put it in a box or require that it be properly packaged. Nonetheless, I was wrong. And he was like, if they did not properly package it, bro, that's pretty much not on them. They don't have to honor any kind of claim or anything. However, if it was properly packaged, they would. So I needed to find that out. I called the airline just to ask, and I'm thinking, surely, of course, like, they're not that dumb. They didn't just put a label on a piece of luggage and send that girl through the system. And sure as shit, they did. They definitely did. Sis said, we don't have boxes that size. Miss Mama's what? I was pissed. I call UPS back and let them know, like, okay, yeah, we are looking for just a piece of luggage. I give the full description of what it looks like, and they're just like, well, girl, we'll look for it for 5 days. After that, sorry, not sorry, and we're not liable. And I'm pissed because I have the products that I love the most in this carry-on. Like, all of my makeup that I traveled with was in the carry-on, because of course you don't want to put that in a check bag. You don't want to have all of your stuff broken by the time you get to where you're going and back. Not only that, I had some of my newest perfumes in there. I had $2,000 cash in there. I had a cute little expensive bag in there. Like, I was stressed and I really wanted to cry, ain't gonna lie. Bars. But I was just like, girl, what is crying gonna solve? Because when you get through, now you're gonna be ugly and your package is still gonna be lost. So don't even do that. I said a little prayer. I said, Lord, you know how you just be trying to bargain with God, and you be like, if you just fix this one issue, I'm never gonna be a hoodlum again. So I threw one of them out there, and I'm just like, he probably like, girl, you said that like how many times now? But I was just like, maybe it'll work. Like, maybe he'll answer it anyway. Shout out to Rare Beauty. This is the thing. I tell people all the time, you can fake it all you want to, but the universe responds to the real you, sis. And I feel like the universe really just tried to come through and help me out, because shout out to Rare Beauty, because they contacted me while I was on vacation. And during all of this, they overnight your girl a package full of products. I was like, it could not have come at a better time, because I pretty much have lost so much of my makeup. I was getting ready to go to the store and just buy it all over. I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna have to go buy everything over. The timing of receiving that package could not have been more perfect. I was so happy, honestly, truly. And then right before I get ready to head out into these streets to repurchase my products, what I could remember that was in there, I get a knock at the door. And I go to the door and I open it and nobody is there. Nobody. But you know what is there? My little raggedy ass piece of luggage, girl, with the label torn off the front. I step outside and see the UPS man hopping up into his little van, girl, and taking off like a thief in the night. I was so grateful, but then I was still pissed. I'm like, girl, why would you just drop her off like this? Like, I felt like he was my baby daddy dropping the kid off in the car seat and just pulling off before I answered the door. But nonetheless, he wasn't, so he was well within his rights. I was just so happy because everything was recovered. My luggage is the type that locks. It has a combination to get in. And granted, The airport did not secure the label or the package, but they damn sure secured the zippers via zip tie. So I guess to make sure nobody could get into it. So that was some added security, I guess. But then they could have cut that off if they was really determined. So I'm taking back their props for that. On top of me having glass bottles of perfume, all of my makeup, all of the palettes that I had and compacts that I had inside of it, nothing was broken except for this Fenty Beauty bronzer. This has been obliterated, okay? Miss Mamas did not make it. This is how I felt. This is literally how I felt through the entire ordeal. Just like this. I haven't decided if I'm going to go through the trouble of trying to put some alcohol in her and repress her out or just buy another one at this point. Yo, I have definitely rambled enough. I just wanted to give y'all the closure and let y'all know that mother did receive her luggage. And this is how it arrived, girl. Let me put a little picture up here and show you this ratchet shit. I can't believe they just would attach the labels. Sis said, we zip tie the labels to the luggage, because we don't have boxes that size. I don't know if I'm more upset with the fact that sis thought it was okay to zip tie the label to the luggage, or that UPS allowed it to move through the system like that. Like, I don't even have words. The pizza didn't even taste good enough to put me through all of this. All right, let's get into today's story, because yeah, that's what we're here for. Today's story is about, I've always called him Gary Heidnick, but I realized while I was doing my research that a lot of people call him Gary Heidnick. I'm gonna stick to what I know because I think it's Heidnick, okay? You know, I told you guys that I was trying to lay off the Aries so much, and the Pisces and us Scorpios. We have been the subject of this mess for far too long, and I was going to make it a personal mission of mine to go after the Capricorns, the Cancers, the Sagittarius, and Aquarius. They're always down in my comment section talking about, you never hear her talking about us so and so. Baby, you're gonna hear me talk about them for the next couple Tuesdays and Thursdays, okay? It's personal. And so I love y'all, but y'all gotta share some of this shame. So here we go. Gary Heidnick was born on November 22nd, 1942. He missed Scorpio season by one day, and he is a Sagittarius. His parents were Ellen and Michael Heidnick, and he was raised in the East Bank suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. Now, just 3 years after he is born, his parents, they decide to call it quits and divorce. He and his younger brother Terry, they are sent to live with their mother, and they are raised by her as a single parent for the next 4 years. But Ellen had some issues with alcohol. So around the 4-year mark, Terry and Gary, oh, their names rhyme. That's cute. Terry and Gary are sent to live with their father and his new wife. And this is when things for Gary really took a turn for the worst as far as his childhood, because his dad was extremely emotionally abusive. According to Gary, it was so bad that he began wetting the bed as a result of the treatment that he received from his father, and that of course only fuels his father's mistreatment of him. When Gary would wet the bed, Michael would humiliate and ridicule Gary by forcing him to hang his soiled bed sheets from his window so that the neighbors, all the little neighborhood kids, they can all see it and know that he had wet his bed, just sending shock waves of peace mails throughout the neighborhood. I would have called the police. His horrible home life, it resulted in him becoming very withdrawn, very shy, very reserved. He didn't socialize much at all. And in school, he rarely, very rarely interacted with the other kids. He was so timid and shy that he wouldn't even look people in the eye. Maybe that was for other reasons. Maybe sis just had some crazy little thoughts in their head, and so he just couldn't look people in the eye and feel comfortable. I don't know. Nevertheless, he was that kid. Like, he was very timid, very shy, wouldn't look you in the eye, okay? Bars. It also didn't help that at some point in his childhood, he had fallen from a tree, girl, and hit his head, which resulted in him having a very oddly shaped head. This was something that not only did his peers tease him about, but his dad teased him about as well. Despite his social struggles in school, he excelled academically. Sis was smart. He was given an IQ test and he scored a 148, which is pretty high. Gary was always really interested in like the military and like army, all things militant. And so after school, he decides to not pursue college, but instead join the army. He did exceptionally well in basic training, and his drill sergeant actually graded him as excellent. Gary applied for several specialist jobs within the army, like the military police and other things like that, but he never got any of them. He was always rejected. Instead, he is sent to San Antonio, Texas to be trained as a medic. This was not the particular job that he wanted, but still he excelled and he put put his best foot forward, child, did his best and did damn well. Unfortunately, though, his military career comes to an end after just 13 months. In August of 1962, shortly after he had received orders that sent him over to Germany, he began complaining of like these severe headaches, dizziness, nausea, and also blurred vision. He goes to see a neurologist, and this doctor, he examines him, and he can't really find anything that's wrong with Gary, but he does make a note that Gary displayed symptoms of psychological issues. And so it is his recommendation that he's then examined or evaluated by a psychologist. The evaluation with the psychologist results in Gary being diagnosed with schizoid personality disorder. The result of that, homeboy is honorably discharged from the Army. Child, the Army said, oh no, sis, we can't have none of that. It was widely speculated that Gary was faking this, that he just did not like his job in the military. He wanted to do something else. He didn't like Germany, and so he used this as a way to get out. However, I disagree, because the things that he did, like, you have to be off somewhere up there in order to do, but we'll get there. Nevertheless, I gotta give you all the tea anyway, and so the theory was that he did not like his job over in Germany. He didn't like Germany itself, and he was looking for a way out. But he wanted to get out of the Army and still be able to receive money, but not have to do any work. And so his goal was to get him a nice little cute little disability coin. First little method was to just disobey orders. And when they didn't kick him out, he started to complain about the headaches and the dizziness and the nausea. And then when they don't find anything there, he decides he was going to pull out his big Joker card and play crazy. According to a man that was a really close friend of his at the time and considered him a best friend, he said that it was a little bit of both. In his opinion, he felt like Gary did have some mental disturbances, but he was also really looking for a way to take advantage of the disability payments. Gary really did also have a mental breakdown over there, and the friend also says that during this time, he was completely convinced that the Army had given him LSD, which caused him to have this breakdown. But what also happened when he had this breakdown was this brilliant idea that he got, which we gonna get to. After returning home from the Army, Gary sticks with nursing. He earns a degree and secures a job at a veterans hospital, but it don't last long because he barely wanted to come to work. And when he was there, he had an attitude problem. He would literally be so mean and so rude to the patients that the hospital just couldn't have that. People were complaining all the time about his nasty little disposition and rudeness. Like, imagine receiving a diagnosis that you're not happy about, and on top of that, sis got an attitude with the delivery. Like, girl, you already telling me bad news. The least you could do is be nice about it. After losing his job as a nurse, Gary begins this pattern of having these episodes, these psychotic episodes, and he would be admitted into hospitals. He would be back and forth in and out of the hospitals for treatment. And during this time, his younger brother Terry was also having the same type of pattern going on in his life. They both definitely dealt with a lot psychologically, and they were not the only ones, unfortunately, because Ellen, she had just recently been diagnosed with bone cancer, and she of course was suffering a lot of the effects of like this extensive background of alcoholism. And she just decided that it was just too much. She drinks a lethal dose of mercury chloride and decides she's just gonna end it all. She wants out. This only adds to her son's suffering, but Gary, as far as career-wise, he wasn't down for long. He had been fired, yeah, but he decided to revisit this brilliant idea that had come to him when he had his breakdown over in Germany. And so in 1971, he devotes himself to God and he opens up the United Church of Ministers of God. He starts this church up over in Philadelphia with only 5 followers and a $1,500 investment. Like, that's what they started with. But it very quickly snowballed into something much bigger. Within the first 5 years, that $1,500 investment grew to well over $500,000. And this was like mid-80s. That is the equivalent of about $1.2 million today. Through his work of recruiting people and convincing them to follow him, because this was a whole cult, let's just call it what it is. He had become very familiar with the art and the usefulness of manipulation. We're going to rewind it back a couple years, back to the late 70s. Gary began seeing a woman by the name of Anjanette Davidson, and I'm using the term seeing this woman very loosely because she was reportedly illiterate and disabled with an IQ of just 49. And Jeanette becomes pregnant by Gary, and she gives birth to a daughter in March of 78. But the daughter is placed into foster care immediately. She's immediately put up for adoption, and this really upsets Gary. He goes and locates Anjanette's sister, a 34-year-old woman with the mental capacity of a 5-year-old. She was also living in an institution for the mentally disabled. Gary goes there, checks Anjanette's sister out on a day pass, takes her back to his house where he locks her in the basement for 9 days. After failing to bring her back, and of course being the one that had signed her out, the police immediately go to him looking for answers about whereabouts. He allows the first searcher to come into his home. He is insisting that Alberta is not there, that he has sent her back to the institution on time via public transportation, and something must have happened between her getting on that bus and making it to the institution. Of course, they were not too quick to believe that. It does not sound like a believable story at all. And so they send the police back to do a second check. It is during this check that they actually find her there in the basement. She is taken to the facility, but she's also examined by medical staff to make sure that she was okay. And it was very apparent that she had suffered some kind of sexual trauma. She had also been given an STD. And so they were like, oh no, sir, this is not okay. Gary is arrested immediately and charged with kidnapping, assault, unlawful restraint, false imprisonment, the interfering with the custody of a committed person, and a couple other charges. Child, it was a lot. They stacked the charges against this. Rightfully so. He, of course, pleads not guilty and denies all of the accusations against him, because you know how y'all Sagittarius do sometimes. Yes, I'm taking it there because I'm tired, okay? Shout out to Damn It Mom, because she left me a comment on my last video, one of the last videos, and she said that she would love a red eyeshadow look, and she loves my content, girl. And so, I try to give y'all what y'all want when I can. I've done like probably one red look, probably. So I was like, yeah, okay. Furthermore, it gives me an opportunity to use this girl again, the Makeup by Tammy Chasing Butterflies palette. A judge orders that Gary be examined by a psychiatrist. This psychiatrist warns the court that it is a very high probability that Gary would reoffend and commit a similar crime. However, because Alberta herself was unable to testify, they were forced to drop the most serious of the charges brought against him, and he is found guilty of unlawful restraint and interference with the custody of a committed person. That's it. Oh no, he was also found guilty of recklessly endangering another human. So those were the only 3 charges that stuck, and he was found guilty of those 3. The judge does take this opportunity to give him the maximum prison sentence allowed, which was unfortunately only 3 to 7 years. Now, this judge was not like the asshole judge in the last case. He did go on record saying that he wishes he could have given Gary more, because if he could, he would have, but by law, it just wasn't possible. And so he just gave Sis the max and hope that he remained in prison for at least that long, at least the 7. Gary spends the next 4 years bouncing between the prison and the hospitals. He would have these psychotic episodes, and then they would take Sis over in a wheelchair to the hospital, and then they'd be like, okay, no, you good now, and take him back over to the cell. After 4 years of this going back and forth, they decide to release him on parole. He immediately goes looking for Anjanette, because at this time, he decided he wanted to start a family. He wanted to have a wife, and he felt like she would be the perfect spouse. But luckily for her, he is unable to find her. At the point in which he decides to give up, he does not give up on the dream. He just gives up on the dream with Anjanette. During this time, his church had been on a steady incline. It was doing well financially. It was definitely wealthy and thriving. He also had a huge following. The only thing he was missing in life was a first lady. He just needed a woman by his side. He was determined to make that happen. Instead of looking for a partner that he could love and cherish until, death broke them up, he decided to go for somebody that he could control and manipulate mentally. Gary begins corresponding with a woman over in the Philippines, and this lady, she didn't speak much English, and so he felt like this was an advantage that he would have. He convinces her to join him over in the US, and when she comes over, the two are married within the first month of her being here. Shortly after the two got married, he showed his true colors to her, and she didn't like what she saw at all. She found him in bed with multiple women that were a part of his following. He also forced her to watch him have these adult exchanges with these women. Thankfully, with the help of the Filipino community over in Philadelphia, she is able to get her things and leave Gary in January of 1986. But when she leaves him, she finds that she is pregnant with their child. A son that she decides is best that she don't even tell him about. She keeps her son a secret from him and she goes on with her life, which I don't blame sis at all. Would have done the same. Not long after his marriage comes to an end, he gets a woman by the name of Gail pregnant. She is also a member of his following. And she also gives birth to a son they name Gary Jr. But this son is immediately given up and put into foster care. Baby, what was the point of naming him Gary Jr. when he was going to go into the foster care system? I don't understand. Just a single junior out here in the world. Do you know how upset I would be with my biological parents for playing with me like that? I don't think that's right. Gary was not happy with this either, and he obviously was not having a lot of luck obtaining and keeping a woman in the general sense, and so he decides that he is going to switch it up a little bit and try a different method. On November 25th, 1986, he picks up 25-year-old sex worker Josephina Rivera under the guise of soliciting her services and, them parting ways. But this was not his intention for her at all. He gets her back to his house. They make their exchange, and when she is getting dressed thinking she's about to just go back to where she came from, he knocks her unconscious, drags her down to the basement, and chains her up. While she is passed out, he begins digging a hole in the floor of the basement, like this pit in the floor, which he throws her in and then places this wooden board over the top of it and then puts weights on top. He leaves her there for about 27 hours and then he comes back to check on her, and of course she is like, baby, what's going on? Now, if this sounds familiar and you old enough, he is actually the real life Buffalo Bill. He inspired the character in Silence of the Lambs. The guy who had the pit in the ground in his house and he was lowering little lotions and stuff down to the girl in a little basket on a string, and he was just like,
it rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again. Now it places the lotion in the basket.
You know what's so crazy? As a child watching that, I was not nearly as disturbed as I was when I watched the scene while I was doing research for this video. As an adult, I was really made uncomfortable. I was clutching my invisible pearls. Child, baby Brittney was sitting there eating buttered popcorn, watching it completely unfazed, but grown old Brittney was shaken and stirred in her spirit. Maybe because by now I've realized that this stuff really be happening to people, and that is what made me uncomfortable. I don't know. That's probably it though. After about a week of her being tied up in this basement with limited food, light, water, all of the things that you need for life, she is down there when she hears not only Gary's voice, but also the voice of another woman. She hears Gary tell this woman, "Come on, Sandy, you know I'm not gonna hurt you." Then she hears the basement door open and she hears footsteps coming down. She hears chains rattling, and by the time he removes the board from over her, because she's down in the pit, she sees that he has now brought in a second woman and chained her up just like he had chained her. The woman is only wearing a shirt, nothing else. He introduces the two and then he leaves them there together to roam the basement, but within chains. She is 24-year-old Sandra Lindsay, a mentally disabled woman that he had gotten to know from the neighborhood. He had met and befriended Sandy several years prior. She actually would attend his church regularly, and that's how he kind of gained the trust of her and her family, because they thought he was this good guy. They thought he was this nice preacher man with great intentions, just of God and all of the good things, but he was not at all. Sandy is very nice. She begins talking to Josephina and telling her of the history between her and Gary. And at this point, Josephina begins to realize just how sick and twisted this man really was. Now, it was very apparent to her that Sandy had a somewhat mental disposition. She is telling Josephina how she will regularly have adult exchanges, because you two be playing, girl, with Gary and his friend Tony, and this had been going on for years. She had also at some point become pregnant by him, but she was forced to terminate, and he was not happy about this at all. So upon finding this out, he decides to take her down to the basement and chain her up. When Sandra's family realizes that some time had passed and they're not seeing her and she should be home by now, they do stop by Gary's house during their search of her, and he tells them that he doesn't know anything about her whereabouts. He had not seen her. He had not heard from her. He doesn't know anything. Over the next month, he keeps these two women locked away in his basement. He does not allow them to bathe or shower, groom themselves in any capacity, or leave the basement at all. He would bring them water and bread, and eventually he would bring them hot dogs for dinner, and that's pretty much the bulk of their diet. And in the time he would spend with them, he would tell them of his plans which was to eventually own a farm and also a harem of about 10 women who he would have kids with, and they would just have children running everywhere, sister wives everywhere, animals everywhere. It'd just be a whole lot. So they realized very early on that he has no intention of letting them go. On occasion, they would try to make attempts at like screaming for help, getting the attention of a neighbor or someone, but unfortunately their cries were only ever heard by Gary, because he's the only one that ever responded. And he will respond with very harsh punishment. The consequences for this would be brutal, be it he make them go without water, he would make them go without food. Sometimes it will be solitary confinement in the hole that he had dug, the pit, which he had actually dug more into to make a little deeper, because of course he had plans of expanding his harem, and so he would need more space for women. He would also take this handcuff and tie them, like suspend them from the ceiling of the basement by one wrist where their toes were barely touching the ground, and he would leave them like this for hours. Meanwhile, Sandy's mother, she had not given up hope finding her daughter. She had actually grew to believe that Gary had to be the one that had taken her, like he had to know something. So she goes to the police. She has all of his information except for his last name. She had his first name, his phone number, his address, all of this. She goes to the police and tells him that her daughter is missing, and she is sure that he has something to do with it. They make several attempts to call him and go to his door, but he never answers his door. He never answers his phone. And after about a month or so of them looking for her, they completely just give up. Around Christmas time, they had completely given up on trying to reach him and pursue the disappearance of Sandy. On December 23rd, about a month after he had abducted Josephina, he increases his head count to 3 when he picks up 19-year-old Lisa Thomas as she is walking to a friend's house. He stops and offers her a ride. Now, at first, when he sees her, he mistakes her for a sex worker, so he stops and tries to solicit some services, and she lets him know, like, I'm just walking to my friend's house. You really tried it. He then offers her a ride. He apologizes and he's like, let me just make it right. Let me drop you off. And she agrees. But instead of taking her where she was going, he takes her to his house, drugs her, chains her up in the basement. And when she comes to, she is down there with both Sandra and Josephina and very much confused. By this time, Gary is feeling real confident. He now has 3 women. And despite people coming by looking for one of them, like nobody ever really pressed too hard. So he felt confident in his efforts to abduct woman number 4. Just a week later, he returns home with Deborah Dudley. Now, Deborah was the most rebellious of the 4 women. The previous 3 were they were afraid, rightfully so. But Deborah was not willing to just go down without a fight. She fought this man at every turn. She was always talking back, always refusing to do what he had asked her to do. And he did not like this at all. So she received a lot of punishment. And no matter how much punishment she received, no matter how much time she spent in solitary confinement down in the hole with the wood over top of her, she was not letting up. She would not let up. Nothing seemed to faze or tame her, and this pissed him off. He noticed that the women were kind of forming a bond with one another, and he felt like maybe if he would make them suffer punishment for her actions, she would care a little more because she wouldn't want to indirectly bring them harm. But even still, Deborah was not with any of the things. Like, she was not letting up. Meanwhile, as time is going by, the women are continuing to strengthen their bond with one another, and he realized that this more than likely will become a problem. And so he had to do something about it, and quickly. What was also becoming a problem for him was the fact that he now had 4 additional mouths to feed. Now, granted, he had a lot of money. Financially, no, this was not a problem. He just had a problem spending this money on these women to feed them. And so he decides to downgrade them to dog food. And as a remedy for the other problem he was looking at, which was the women forming their bond between each other, he decides to incorporate a ranking system, because this, of course, would definitely bring about some division amongst them. Now, at one point, seniority was what he based his ranking system on. So the longer you had been there, the more seniority you had. And then at one point, he went to rotating the girls so that everyone had a chance to be the wife in charge. The wife in charge would be the one that is in charge of the girls. She would also be given different privileges, like when everybody else was forced to be in the pit together while he was away from the house, she would be free to roam the basement, but still in chains. But she wouldn't have to be down there in the hole with the rest of them. Her responsibilities was to watch over the other girls and report to him any kind of wrongdoing or any misbehaving that they had done in his absence. And then when he returned and got his report, he he will punish them accordingly. Gary would also force the wife in charge to participate in the punishment administered to any woman that had done anything wrong, which of course he did because, like I said, he is trying to break their bonds, and so he wanted them to kind of feel a way about each other, be upset with each other, be angry, dislike each other. That was the goal. And if she simply said that nobody had done anything, there was no misbehaving to report, he would just beat them all, including the wife in charge. They will all just be punished. And if at any time he felt like she was going soft on them or holding back when she was participating in the punishing of the other women, he would also punish her as well. So it was kind of a lose-lose situation. The more pleased he was with her turn being the wife in charge, the better the reward would be. So he would give really good food, really comfortable sleeping arrangements, and he made it very clear that disobeying him or giving any inkling that you cannot be trusted would result in you not only losing all of your privileges, but very harsh punishment. Now, after a couple of rotations, he notices that Josephine appears to really be enjoying this. Like when it's her turn, she seemed really into it. She seemed like she thoroughly enjoyed tormenting the other women almost as much as he did. This caused him to begin to trust her a little bit more and also become more fond of her versus the other women. He really admired this about Josephine and really favored her because of it. And so therefore he decides to cut the rotation. Instead of continuing to rotate the women, he would just make her the permanent boss, the permanent wife in charge. And she lived up to that title. Now, this brought about a lot of controversy because a lot of people felt like they didn't understand or like the fact that Josephina had pretty much gone from being abused to being an abuser. They didn't like the fact that she was so willing to participate in his sick behavior as opposed to the other women who obviously didn't enjoy it at all. But she was obviously a victim of Stockholm Syndrome, which is very, very real. On January 18th, about 2 weeks after the addition of Deborah, he brings in woman number 5, 18-year-old Jacqueline Askins. To celebrate them being halfway to his goal of 10 women and also Josephina's birthday, he gets all of the women Chinese food and bottles of champagne. He goes down into the basement with the women. They have dinner, they have a drink together, and celebrate. About 2 weeks after this incident, he comes down to the basement and he notices the wood is moving a little bit. All of the women are in the hole underneath the wood, but it's starting to slide. And it's Sandra underneath trying to work it off the top of them, probably because they needed some fresh air. I'm not sure. Whatever the case, he becomes livid that she is trying to do this, and he takes her out of the hole, puts her in the handcuff, and chains it up to the ceiling of the basement where her toes are barely touching the floor. Instead of leaving her like this for hours, he leaves her like this for days. The first couple days, he was only giving Sandra water, and then he would bring like ice cream down for the other women, different treats like that to just really torment her. After the first couple days, he decides to then give her bread and water, but she's refusing to eat at this point. He makes several attempts to force feed her, but like stuffing the bread in her mouth and trying to pour water in, but she's still refusing to eat. And Sandra is not just being defiant. She is actually very sick. Despite her running a very high fever and vomiting, he is telling the girls that she's faking. Nothing is really wrong with her. He is continuing to try to force bread into her mouth and like force her to swallow by putting water in afterward and then holding her jaw closed. And it was not working. She still was not getting anything down. Several days passed and then Sandra just completely succumbs to her conditions and her body goes limp. When this happens, Josephina calls him into the basement. He's still accusing her of faking, but when he puts the key in the handcuff and it unlocks, she just completely falls to the floor. When she falls, she hits her head on the concrete and she does not move. He goes down to check her vitals and he realizes that she is not faking at all. Josephina becomes extremely emotional because they have been there the longest together. Despite what it might have looked like, she really did like Sandra a lot. They had a bond and she was very emotionally distraught. He immediately takes Sandra upstairs and warns them that if they did not calm down and relax, that it could be any one of them next. So they're in the basement, they're horrified, but even more horrified when about an hour or two goes by and then they hear the sounds of a power saw coming from upstairs. And they realize he is very obviously going to work on Sandra right now. What he was really up to up there was even more horrific than they could have even imagined. He comes down to the basement and gets Deborah, the one that was always talking back and giving him issues, takes her upstairs. And what he shows her completely horrifies her. Sandra's head is in a stock pot on the stove boiling. Her ribs are in the oven in a roasting pan baking. One of his dogs was chewing on a bone, and the rest of her he had put into these Ziploc bags and labeled dog food and placed in the freezer. He then tells her that if she does not straighten up her act, that she would be next. When Deborah returns to the basement, she is very shaken up and she is very quiet, very different than the Deborah that they had known. And she remains like this for days. She tells them what she had seen, and she is just shaking in her spirit like mother would have been. But after a couple of days and the shock wearing off, she returned to her normal rebellious self and was back to talking back and not taking any of his mess. Meanwhile, the neighbors began to notice this real foul odor coming from Gary's home. It was so bad that they contacted the police about it. When the police come out to investigate, Gary opens his door and he's just like, oh, I was cooking a roast and I had fallen asleep and it burned and I've been trying to get the smell out, but I can't. They take that as truth. That's like the extent of their investigation, and they're just like, oh, okay, and they leave. He realizes that he definitely has to get rid of as much as he can, and he comes up with a very sick and twisted plan. The most sick and twisted plan thus far. 3 of the women were on punishment and they had been denied food and they were really, really hungry. And so he takes the meat from the roasting pan and the pot, shreds it and mixes it with dog food and takes it down into the basement to feed the other women. They knew what it was, but at this point they had gone so long without food that they just felt like they really had no choice. Now by this time they decided, you know what, we have to get out of here. Like, we have to devise a plan to get out of here ASAP, because this can be any one of us next, and this is just too far. Things have been taken way too far. They devised a plan to attack him, and they're feeling really confident because they're like, you know what, we outnumber him. We can take sis. All we need is a little help. By this time, Josephina, she had gained so much favor with Gary that he was allowing her to go up into the house, watch movies in the living room, go take baths daily up there unattended. And so they just simply asked her, like, look, while you're up there and he's not paying you any attention, go get us a kitchen knife, bring it back down. We'll handle the rest, sis. Instead, Josephina goes and tells Gary their plan. She tells him everything, like, this is what they're planning to do and this is what they want me to do, and I ain't doing it. And the girls are pissed. For her loyalty to him, she is rewarded, and for their deceitfulness, they are severely punished. He handcuffs each of the women up to the ceiling by their wrists, and he jams a screwdriver into their eardrum because he felt like if they were deaf, they couldn't hear each other and plot against him in the future. He then had Josephina fill the pit with water, attach these stripped extension cords to each of the women's chains, and then shock them while he watched. The shock was so intense that Deborah Dudley does not survive it. Like, she doesn't make it through. Gary's reaction to losing Deborah was great. Now I can get back to having a peaceful basement. Josephina informing him of the women's plot against him really solidified his trust in her. He would watch movies with her. The two would engage in conversation, seemingly enjoying each other's company. He now views her as a full-on accomplice versus one of his captives. And he was ready to go out and get another woman to replace one of the 2 that he had just lost. And guess who was going to go out and help him? Miss Josephina. The 2 go out together on the search for their next addition. In March of 1987, the 2 are successful in doing so when they spot 24-year-old Agnes Adams. They bring her back to the house and she is like, girl, what's going on here? They chain her up, and of course she is mortified by what she sees. She's begging to be let go, and of course Gary is not trying to show her any kind of mercy, and he damn sure is not about to let her go. For all of her devotion to him and her helping him replace one of the women that they had lost, Josephina asked Gary if, as a reward, she could just go home and visit her family just for a little while. She didn't want to spend the night. She just wanted to stay there maybe like an hour or 2 just to check in with them, let them know she's okay, and just to see them. Initially, he is not open to it at all. He tells her there's no way he is allowing her to leave and be gone unsupervised. He needs her. He was afraid that she would run away and she wouldn't return. But over the course of their conversation, she is ultimately able to convince him that she's devoted to him. She felt like she had proven her devotion to him by informing him of the other women's plans, helping him to get another woman. And she also said that she knew a woman that she could convince to come back to the house, and he would have replaced both women within a day. Now, this little promise is what made him begin to entertain the thought, because he was very desperate to get to this 10. He was down 2 women and he wanted to at least replace them both right away. So he's like, you know what? She's really proven her devotion to me. She's proven that she can be trusted. It's the least I could do, really. She is to thank for my newest addition. Together, they come up with a plan. He is going to drive her near her neighborhood, drop her off down the street to where she is within a walking distance of her family's home. And then he would drive off. She would go visit with her family for a short period of time, get the girl that she's planning on bringing back with her, and then the 2 of them will walk to a nearby gas station where he would be waiting for the 2 of them, and then he would take them back to the house. He drops her off on the corner for her to walk the rest of the way. She starts to walk. He drives off, heading to the gas station, and as soon as he is out of her sight, she takes off to the nearest phone available and calls 911 instead. She tells the police what he had done, where he could be found right now, and that there are these other women that are at his house in the basement. So they dispatch cars right away to come out, one to come get her, another car to go to the gas station and gather that girl like an Easter egg on Easter Sunday, and also go and rescue and free the other women that he had in his home. His best friend Tony is also arrested. Tony, he is released on bail right away because he had agreed also to testify against Gary in court and spill all of the business. News, of course, spread really rapidly about what Gary had done, and he could not take the heat. He makes an unsuccessful attempt at checking out of this here thing called Life. They put him on watch because, of course, they don't want him to try to check out and evade his punishment. When Gary goes to court, guess what he tells these people? Guess what he expected them to believe? That the girls were already in the house when he moved in. They were already there in the basement. He just kept them there and fed them. By the time that he was appointed a lawyer, the lawyer was like, you know what, our best bet is an insanity plea. We just gonna go with that and see how far that gets us. But the prosecution was like, hold on now, sis ain't too off in the head. He's over there running a whole church. He has a brokerage firm. He has over $500,000. He ain't too crazy. If he can do all of this, he surely can be held accountable for these actions. He knew exactly what he was doing. I know y'all ain't forget that he was Sister Gary Heidnick, did you? Yes, he was still running that church, which was ultimately his downfall because it proved that he was definitely mentally stable to a degree in which he could and should be held accountable for these actions. Now, in July of 1988, he is sentenced to death, found guilty of all charges. He makes a final attempt at saying goodbye, cruel world, and is unsuccessful yet again. His Filipino ex-wife, as well as the daughter that he had with another woman, they both filed motions attempting to have him taken off of death row. You remember Michael, his dad? Baby, Michael was out here protesting for the opposite. Michael said, off with his head, girl. Take him down. He deserves it.
Electric chair.
Every bit of it. And the courts agreed. On July 6th of 1999, he receives his little lethal dose and he is sent to the hottest little corner of hell, I'm sure. His was the last and final execution to be carried out in the state of Pennsylvania. As for his little church following / cult, a lot of people question just how much they knew because these people were having church services at his house on Sundays, right above where the women were kept. And not only that, even after he is arrested, they continued to come to the house and have church on Sunday. It's like they were not at all fazed by what he had done. Didn't seem to care. They still showed up every Sunday to have church at his house. Now we know Tony Brown, who was his best friend and part of the church, he knew what was going on because, he admitted to being a part of it. He said he was there when he had done what he'd done to Sandra, and that he was there participating in a lot of other things that happened with the women. But because Tony was also mentally disabled, and because he had come forward and testified against Gary, he was viewed more so as a victim of Gary's manipulation than like a full-on accomplice. So after he testified, that pretty much was it for him. Like, he was pretty much let off the hook. Now, as for Josephina, I briefly mentioned how the public responded to her role in everything, and her being an accomplice. The other women, I know Jacqueline for sure did an interview speaking out against Josephina, because a lot of people were upset. They were like, you willingly participated. Like, they just couldn't understand how it was okay for her to do some of the things that she did, for her to appear to have enjoyed it. Nobody was here for Josephina at all. And the other women were very angry because they felt like a lot of the things that she did wasn't even necessary. Like, she was just unnecessarily cruel, and they believed that she too enjoyed it. The last woman that they had brought in, that she actually picked up with him, she didn't even know that Josephina was ever held captive like the other women. She believed that the two of them were equals and they were accomplices, because from what she saw the day she spent in the house with them, that's what it looked like. So they remained very upset with her for a while. But when she did an interview, she said that she very much was a victim of Stockholm Syndrome. And she said that anytime you're abducted and you're completely cut off from the outside world and taken away from everything that you know, you have no connection to the outside world whatsoever, after some time, you're going to grow to like the captor to some degree. Like, you're going to see them as human. You're going to form a bond, which is what happens when you have Stockholm Syndrome. Like, that's what it is. So she's not wrong. And so she said, despite the circumstances and the conditions, you're going to grow to like them because they're the only tie you have to the outside world and life as you previously knew it. And they also have your life in their hands. Like, they're your only source of everything you need to survive. She denied enjoying any of it. She said that the things that she did because she had to. It was for survival and survival alone. It was never for any kind of pleasure or enjoyment ever. And she stands by that. Like, sis was like, nah, he was the sick one. I was just trying to live. And so I want to know what y'all think. I get it, because I'm torn a little bit. Not completely down the center of the page, but like torn at one of the edges. Because I understand what Stockholm Syndrome is just by me being familiar with other cases, like the Colleen Stan case. Patty Hearst, is that her name Patty Hearst? I think it's Patty Hearst. That case, like, so I get and understand how they form these bonds with their captors. Like, I get what she was saying, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like I want to say, well, did you have to go as far as you did sometimes? But then again, it's like, girl, who am I to judge?
Who are me to judge?
There's no telling what you'll do in order to survive. He was giving them harsh punishment when he just suspected that they were going easy on the other women. So she could have very well just been doing it in order to keep her life. And say what you want about her and have your opinions, but she is the reason why they all got out in the end. The ones who did make it was because she came up with that little plan of, convincing him to let her go home to her family for a couple of hours. She also stated that she told their plan because she felt like their plan was dumb, just for the simple fact that he never brought the keys to the shackles that they were in down to the basement with him. So if they attacked him and they were successful in doing so, they pretty much would just be chained up and stuck down in the basement with a dead body. She was always on board for them getting out of there, but she felt like it needed to be a plan where they outsmarted him instead of overpowering him, because overpowering him she just felt like wouldn't work. And so from there, she secretly began plotting to gain more and more trust day by day, until he trusted her enough to let her go home and visit her family. And she didn't tell any of the other girls about the plan because she felt like one of them might do what she did and tell him what she was plotting and ruin everything. You know what? I always want to know what y'all think, but with this one, like, I really cannot wait to hear what y'all got to say or read what y'all got to say about it. A lot of times y'all bring up different point of views that I never would have thought of, and then I'm just like, oh, like, I really can get it. Y'all be smart. Y'all be putting 2 and 2 together. And sometimes y'all get 5, but y'all my girls and I still love y'all. So I want to know what your thoughts are on this case. I also want to know if y'all like this little old red look. Damn it, mom, girl. I hope. First of all, I just called you girl, so I hope you really won. And I hope you like it, girl, when I get done with it. I don't do red often, but this is really cute. And I really do genuinely like this palette and the cake liners. Y'all, it was a real struggle not to dip into those cake liners today because y'all know I use them any opportunity that I get, y'all. I come up with more excuses to use them girls than a man that's on his way to jail. Alright, so this is the thing, y'all. This story was so interesting to me, and I did a lot of talking and a lot less makeuping during the story, so I got quite a ways to go. And a lot of y'all don't mind when I talk at the end of my videos. So let's talk, my girl. Let's talk about my business. First of all, shout out to all of y'all who come over to IG and kick it with me on IG Live. Y'all are a mess, but I love y'all and I appreciate y'all a lot, even though y'all talk me into doing bad things like adding tequila to Mike's Hard Lemonade, even though none of y'all suggested that I do it. And that's another thing. Like, y'all just don't even mind me blaming y'all. I go to Instagram Live and I just blame them girls for everything, child. Anything I do on live that is risky business, I always blame on y'all. And I tell the girls, look, if this goes left, I'm gonna come over here where I got more followers and I'm gonna tell them that it was all y'all's fault. Y'all made me do it. And even still, y'all return to the live and we have a good time and y'all don't mind my shenanigans at all. So shout out to all of y'all, as well as all the people who are giving me all the tea about Houston. Y'all are telling me about all the shadowy places that I must never visit.
What about that shadowy place?
Must never go there.
Y'all are telling me about the traffic. It's quite a few people that are like, why are you moving to Houston? I don't get it. But for the most part, about 95% of the people are like, yes, come to Texas. Like, it's really a vibe. I love it. You'll love it. I'm really sold on the idea. I just can't imagine with all the things that there is to do in Houston that I wouldn't have a good time. I'm excited to be coming to Beyonce land really soon. I'm actually filming my next couple videos ahead because I'll be traveling to Houston to physically look at the now 6 properties. It was 5 last video. Now it's 6. Y'all, Blue and I are driving, so I might vlog a road trip. I don't know which lip color I want to use. I already had Inspire. Y'all have seen me use that before. It's so beautiful. It's like a red orange, but they sent me all of these too. I kind of want to use this one. I'm so excited to be moving. Like, I literally cannot wait. I've never in my life done anything like this. Just picked up and moved to a different city on my own. It's a really exciting time in my life. A lot of y'all have reached out to me like on Instagram and expressed your well wishes and excitement for me venturing into this new chapter in my life, and I really appreciate it. Thank y'all so much. I'm excited too. I'm excited to show y'all. I might vlog the process of me going down the road trip, looking at apartments, us coming back, because you know Blue is gonna give me all kinds of blue, all kinds of shade and judgment and love. He's probably bipolar. Y'all know what Blue gives. I'm also really looking forward to being able to film anytime I want to and just get a lot more content done. If I don't get up and film super early, all you will hear is the people above me running, screaming, yelling, like it's very much ghetto in the apartment above me. So I'm excited about that too, being able to film anytime. That freedom to film at any point in my day will also give me the opportunity to film other types of content. So Mother will be starting a second channel where I'm doing cooking over there. That's what I want to do on my second channel. It's not going to be true crime related or makeup related. It's going to be food, period. Food and lifestyle. I'm going to vlog over there. Y'all will see more Blue over there and how he likes to shade me on the daily. More of my ridiculous life, because it gets entertaining, honestly. It does. My sister's been telling me I need to vlog forever. She's like, girl, the things that happen on the daily basis, our family is funny as hell. The things that just happen to you, your reactions to things that happen on the daily are always hilarious. So you need to vlog. I'm like, girl, I ain't got time. But when I get to Houston, I'm gonna make time. You know what? Y'all about to get a 2-for-1 combo. Because I was going to tell this story, but it's not really enough of it, like long enough for me to make a whole video about it. It's kind of on theme here because it's about this lady that moved to Texas, and I probably shouldn't tell it because it's kind of like, girl, that will make you not want to go, because it did scare me a little bit. Should I tell the story? Well, hell, I done brought it up. So let me go make me a cocktail, because what time is it? Don't judge me, girl. It's noon now, so Mother can have a drink. I'm about to go make me a cocktail, and I'll be right back. And we're going to talk about this short little mini case that has been on my mind since I've been thinking about moving to Texas. Child, hold on, girl. Just don't hang up. Just hold on. My girl, are you still there? Are you still on the line, girl? I hope so. I got tequila and Sprite, and I'm ready to provide y'all this second little story. It's gonna be real short. It's not gonna be super long. So there's this woman, and I forgot her name because this is not something I just plan to do. This is very impromptu. She was planning, just like me, to move to Houston, Texas. And she had looked at many apartments. And as with me, safety is very much a concern being a single woman. She didn't even have a dog. It was just her. So she was very much concerned about the area she moved to and feeling like she was safe. The apartment that she chose, she did so because they had 24-hour security staff, security guard on premises at all times. This security guard was also available to like walk you to your apartment late at night if you needed, like if you felt uncomfortable at any point, you can just call on them. They'll be right there to your aid. The neighborhood that it was in also looked really nice and really safe and secure. So sis felt really comfortable. She moves into her little apartment and then she's like, you know what? The scene, the nightlife is supposed to be really lit, really nice. I'm gonna get out, try to make some friends, see what it is to be seen in Houston. She goes out to this bar. She's having drinks. She's having fun. She's mingling with the people there. She meets a guy there. When she got ready to leave, he offers her a ride. Over the night, she had become very comfortable with him. She really liked him as a person. They were really cool. So she's like, okay, this might be okay. We're not going that far. She accepts the ride. He drops her off at her apartment, offers to walk her up, and she's just like, well, no, I can take it from here. She didn't really want him to know exactly where she lived, like not down to the door. And so she denies him walking her up. He drives off and she goes up to her apartment. In the middle of the night, the same night, she hears somebody coming into her apartment. When she opens her eyes, she sees a dark figure coming into her apartment. She can't tell who it is because, of course, it's really dark. They're wearing dark clothes as well. And she is spooked. This person jumps on top of her. He is attempting to assault her. She's trying to fight him off. He just gets really, really violent with her. He ends up cutting her across the neck. She's thinking that the person, whoever it is a complete stranger until this person says her name. He calls her by her name. Now, mind you, she doesn't know anybody in this city. She has no friends there. So she is like, who is this that knows my name? And instantly, she thinks of the guy from the bar that had given her a ride home. Granted, she is bleeding a lot. She manages to make it to the bathroom with the phone. She locks herself inside of the bathroom. She calls 911. She's telling the operator what happened, and he's dispatched a car out and the paramedics to come to her. While she's on the phone with the paramedic, she hears a knock at the door. Her initial thought is that the police have arrived, but they didn't announce like police or anything like that. And the operator, he's like, no, I can see on this little tracker that they have not yet made it to your apartment. Do not open the door. And she's like, are you sure I shouldn't open the door? And he's like, don't open it. So whoever it is, they're constantly knocking on the door, and he announces that he's security. He's like, it's security. So she's relieved. She's like, okay, it's security. Like, she tells the dispatcher it's security in the apartment. Like, I should be able to let him in, right? The dispatcher hesitates, but he felt like, you know what? No, it's just safe to just wait for the police and the paramedics. Like, he's like, you know what? I don't care who it is at the door. I don't care if it's your mama, girl. Don't answer the door. Just wait on the police. It does not hurt. So she listens to him. She does not open the door. Meanwhile, moments later, she does hear the police come up, and she hears the police and the paramedics talking to the person who was at the door. The security guard is telling the police how there was an assailant on the premises, that he had fought them off, that he too had been attacked, and he showed them like some cuts on his arm. They're talking to her, getting her statement. She's telling him everything that she can remember about the guy from the bar that night. And then the police notice there's a security badge inside of the bedroom. And so they're like, sis, do you work security or no? Do you have a security friend? And she is like, no. Turns out it was not the guy from the bar at all. It was the security guard that worked in the building that had gotten into her apartment and attacked her. He left her for dead, but he had actually come back to try to get his belt and his security badge that he realized after the fact that he had left in the apartment. I think he left his drawers behind too, if I'm not mistaken. I believe he did leave his underwear. It was either his underwear or his socks that were also left in her apartment complex. So when they go to him, they're like, yeah, tell us that again. Okay, now take off your pants. Now, whether it was the underwear or the socks, one of the two, he was missing. Whatever they found in the room, he was not wearing. And so they realized that, yeah, for sure, this was him. She survived the whole ordeal miraculously, and they hauled his ass off to jail. But that's just a crazy little story that has been in the back of my mind, girl, since I said I wanted to move to Houston. I said, this is what they're doing in Houston, girl. Is this what's going on? Does mother need a gun? I didn't even have a little taste of my cocktail while I was telling this story. Mouth just dry. I'm gonna wrap this video. I hope you liked the look. I hope you enjoyed spending time with me. As always, I appreciate that so much. Don't forget to like this video. Please give it a thumbs up, y'all. I feel like that ain't too much to ask. I be begging y'all for the likes, girl. Let me know what your thoughts are down below on both cases. Now, as always, I love you so much. I really, really do. And I cannot wait to see you again on Thursday. Peace. When Gary would wet the bed, what was I calling him? Mikhail? Who was Mikhail, girl? Damn, his name is Michael. I guess I was trying to fancify him. At some point in his childhood, girl, I didn't moisturize. I'm doing my eyes first. He was given an IQ test and scored a 146. No, it's 148, girl. Still, girl, what's going on, bro? Unfortunately, false improvement. Gary is very highly likely to girl, what? Sandra Lindsay, a girl, what was I about to say? Misabled. She is 24-year-old. Jesus. On occasion, they would try to make. Girl, a make is not a word. How much time he had paid. Instead of rotation, the women. Girl, what? When he goes to court, guess is what? Grossman, I'm too excited. Don't forget to like this video, share with a fan.